Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are finally coming back to the series of shirim that we opened up, post-traumatic Torah, where we're slowly but surely traveling the course of understanding the transition from the original perfection of the Luchos Rishonos, the shattering, the trauma that takes away that original perfection, and the emergence of the Luchos Shnios, which is the uncovering of the secret that there is a perpetual source of meaning and life to be found within the ruins themselves. That the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged for the Torah to be Niskala throughout history, throughout the world, is that first and foremost it should be revealed by way of the ideal. That's the Torah Harishona, that's the Luchos Rishonos, that's the Torah of Atzilus, that's the place of the Aleph that doesn't even enter into the conversation because of its refinement. And in those Luchos Rishonos, things operate in a state of idealism. Things operate in the way that we want them to operate, and we measure things in accordance to perfection and idealism and simplicity and naivete and the ignorance that enables a person to live with a certain bliss in this world by not being exposed to the shattering and the breaking apart that comes for all ideas. And then something happens. There's a breakdown. There's something that happens. In Rabbi Nachman's stories, this event is always described in nondescript terms. There was an event that took place that caused the entire nation to run into the forest. After that which happened, meaning to say the nondescript breakdown point that each and every person goes through. When the Luchos Rishonos shatter and transition into a Luchos Shnios, the reason it's undefined, and yes, there's a general term for it called Shviras HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels, but the particular symptomology and at which point the Luchos Rishonos break for the individual is in accordance with that person's framework, with that person's mind, with that person's heart, and with that person's body. So yes, Moshe Rabbeinu brought down Luchos Rishonos and they fell from Moshe Rabbeinu's hand, and the letters of Luchos Rishonos were Pareach Ba'avir, they floated above, and it was in that shattering that we learned the secret of drawing down the Luchos Shnios. But the fact that the Luchos broke for Moshe Rabbeinu just means that Moshe Rabbeinu contains within himself all eventual soul expressions of Nishmas Yisrael. Every soul, every individual character that we encounter in the body of Klal Yisrael is a nitzutz of Moshe Rabbeinu, as Chazal teach us, because Chazal are the ones who give us the wisdom of understanding the secret of Moshe, which is Bittul, which is Va'anachnu Ma, and Chazal is Gematria Ma. It's the Chachma, it's the Koyach of Ma that gives us the ability to draw down the Torah of Torah Shabbat Peh, which is the element of Luchos Shnios. That Moshe Rabbeinu, when the vessel shattered for Moshe Rabbeinu, that was the collective shattering of the vessels. But every soul and every Nakuda of Torah that was included within that collective framework of Moshe Rabbeinu's Das undergoes its own particular shattering and transition out of that first stage of the naive simplicity of the Luchos Rishonos and the sudden departure into the realm of Luchos Shnios. So each person, in spite of the fact that everybody's shvira and the transition from the first Luchos into the second Luchos, from the Torah of Atzilus into the Torah of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, from unity into separation, it happens when it happens. It goes accordance to the pathways of our own lives, but it's all rooted in the collective and general shattering that took place with Moshe Rabbeinu. So anytime that any of us go through the process of having the Luchos Rishonos shattered and that feeling of them being broken and the need to pick them back up and to place them in the Aron Kodesh and to come to uncover the fact that it's specifically from within the shards and the fragments of the previous ideal that I held so true and then it broke, and it's specifically with those fragments that I'm going to build and uncover my new Luchos Shnios. That koyach that we go through whenever that happens is rooted in the experience of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's the das of Moshe that gives us the koyach to move through this process. And because Hakadosh Baruch Hu was the one who looked at Moshe Rabbeinu's shattering of the vessels, the collective shattering of the vessels, that moment where the Luchos Rishonos, where the idealism and the naivete and the sense of absolute goodness and clarity and all of the things that we so desperately wish we could live in accordance to the simplicity and the non-complicated nature of their truth, those things fell apart. Moshe Rabbeinu encountered the Chet Ayin Gimel, the Chet of the Egel, and it was the polar opposite of what Moshe Rabbeinu had experienced up above. Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down from the realm of absolute unity, and what he found himself falling into was Nishmas Klal Yisrael falling into absolute disunity. in a very, very delicate mistake, all rooted in the shame of Moshe Boishesh Lavo, all rooted in that Chet of Adam Arishon that the Netziv says, this Boishesh Lavo, this tarrying that Klal Yisrael saw by Moshe Rabbeinu, this anxiety of time awareness, was in truth only the result of the Chet of the Eitz Hadas that took place in Gan Eden. That was really the first beginning of the shattering of the first Luchos. Adam Arishon was the first Luchos. And then when Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, that was the shattering of the first Luchos. And being kicked out of Gan Eden is the necessity of picking up the rubble of the original Luchos, and the avoida that Adam Arishon is given and the levushim that Adam and Chava are given is the process of uncovering the secret of the Luchos Shnios. Because we see that for Rabbi Meir, b'Tayraso, it was nichtav katnus or with an aleph instead of katnus or with an ayin. After the Chet of Adam Arishon, after we were exiled and pushed out like a divorcee from the land of Gan Eden, as the Medrash says, and we were separated and cut off and cut away from the original idealism, so there was a busha that unfell into the world. There was a shame, there was a self-awareness, a self-obsession that takes place when a person becomes aware of the fact that things are not ideal. If I'm not judging reality, then everything is ideal because there's no negative judgment. Through the Chet of the Eitz Hadas, through the descent from the Luchos Rishonos of the Aleph, where all there was the absolute revelation of the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the Beis, which creates the threat of disunity as reflected in the Lahat HaCheref HaMesapechas, that fiery rotating sword that blocks entrance back into Gan Eden by way of the doubtful and uncertain and indeterminate elements of human experience. That gives birth to the need for Adam and Chava to be self-aware and to be malbish themselves in levushim. Now, those levushim, where do those levushim come from? Those levushim come from the very tree that Adam and Chava ate from, highlighting the fact that the entirety of the Torah is ultimately going to come to teach us a singular truth, which is that mineu be ave from the forest itself comes the handle for the axe, or that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mamtik mar b'mar, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu fixes the bitter with the bitter, or that it's the thing that breaks, which is in fact going to be the thing that builds, and it's going to be the house of Paro that gives birth to the redemption from the house of Paro, and it's going to be the Tzimtzum that gives birth to the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory, and it's going to be exile that gives birth to Geula, and it's going to be the sense of difficulty and darkness that gives birth to ease and light. That's the Kol Torah Kula al Regalachas. It starts with light, it descends down into a particularization and a descent into darkness, and then it emerges afterwards an element of light that shows us how all of the darkness is also light. And so when we descend out of the Torah Rishona into the Chet of the Eitz Hadas, and we fix ourselves with that which is broken, which is the levushim, the need to cover ourselves, the need to develop identities and personalities and personas and to project the self and to worry about things in this world, rather than to sit competently and confidently within the Yishuv HaTov of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything good at every moment and is Maleh Ha'aretz Deas Hashem. So the need to put on levushim. Levush is a secondary expression of the self. Levushim of the machshava, levushim of dibor, levushim of emotion. Levushim are the garments of self through which we project ourselves by way of concealment to the other, and it's always a separation from who I truly am. Any act of revelation is always already a stepping away from who I am essentially, and that's the secret of a levush. A levush is something that conceals. It reveals that which it's coming to conceal because it can't be grasped without levush. But sof davar kol nishma, what a person is expressing themselves as is a levush, and the levush is a katnus or. The levush is a katnus. It's a garment of or, of skin. Ayin vav resh. It means the physicality, the thickness of the narrative structure that each and every person finds themselves in. The in between, the good and the bad, the in between the dark and the light. That chashmal, that illumination of the body that can become illuminated or darkened, that operates in that in between space of not knowing the balance of it, and it's only going to be determined once we take an active participation in our life through volitional behavior to determine the balance of that orientation towards rishus, towards not knowing what the definitive expression of this thing is. That's the katnus or, that's the body, that's the noga, that's the in-between stages that we find ourselves in. And that's the beginning of the luchos shnios. When we fall out of Gan Eden and we encounter the luchos shnios, we're now being mislabesh ourselves in the levushim of the mind, the levushim of the heart, the levushim of the soul. And it's always a secondary expression. But we see that Chazal says something incredible, that in the Torah of Bria Yitzira Asiya, in the Torah of the second Luchos of after Gan Eden, what we find is that even though for most people it says katnus or with an ayin, implying the concealment of the body and the shame-inducing element of the body, and that busha that is born for Adam and Chava, which expresses itself by the Chet HaEgel, when they were aware of Boishesh Moshe Lavo, that sense of time awareness and the tarrying of time and being too early or too late, which was kind of the emergence of the bays of Bereshis and the Torah of Bri Yitzir and Asiya, where there was a beginning and there's after the beginning. That's always in the post-traumatic Torah. Something happened and it blocks me from the original beginning, and that's the birth of time. And that's the elongation of time, and that's the time that time takes, and the old age that comes with time. It's all relegated to the realms of the Torah of Bri Yitzir and Asiya. And that's the Katniss Or with an ayin. But for Rabbi Meir, he wrote, instead of Katniss Or with an ayin, which represents the physicality and the constriction of self, he wrote it with an aleph, referring to the fact that in truth, this concealment is illuminative. It reveals. It's a hiding that shines. The levush that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places us in, the necessity of descending down into exile when seen through the eyes of Rabbi Meir, who sees things from a perspective of the future where everything, the trauma and the post-trauma, the pre-trauma and the post-trauma are all revealed to be part and parcel of the same expression, which is what enabled Rabbi Meir to be the one who could continue to learn from Acher. Rabbi Meir was able to discern the fundamental presence of God both in light and in darkness because he had the maturity and the confidence to discern what was good for him and what was bad for him based on the das of his Rebbeim and his tzaddikim. Rabbi Meir, who represents that scent of Mashiach Tzidkenu and the secret of Meir being Roshei Tevos Ruach Hapenu Mashiach Hashem, that secret of Rabbi Meir, who was able to find the rimon and he was able to throw out the external shell and enabled himself to access the inside of that Katniss Or with an ayin, which is the secret of the secondary Torah, which is expressed in the weekdays through that secret of matat. Rabbi Meir was able to find that place and refine it, and he revealed that this concealment and the descent down into the luchos shnios of the Katniss Or with an ayin, which is the self-consciousness and the imaginative posturings of self for the sake of other, and all of the different conditions of being human being, and all of the iterations of pain that takes place internally, and not even to begin to discuss the pain that regards other people, which is unfathomable and impossible to deal with in any other way than trying to do whatever we can to alleviate their pain, to fix the problem for them in whatever limited way that we can, and to be melamed zchus, and to find nekudos tovos, and to daven, and to have rachamim rabim on another person. Over here, we're talking about the inner pain that a person still has a certain capacity to deal with. When it's talking regarding the pain of others externally, there's not so much Torah to be said. The only thing to do is to try and alleviate the problem, is to try and do a favor for another Yid. As the Rebbe has said, that a person can give Torah on anything except the suffering of another Yid. When it comes to the suffering of others, so it's not time for Divrei Torah. That's time for doing. That's the shirish of the Torah, which is Olam Chesed Yibana. But when we're dealing with our inner modes of constricted consciousness and the post-traumatic hue that colors the eyesight of our lives. So it's here that we have to learn the secret of being mamtik zayin alt, fixing everything by accessing the mindset of Rabbi Meir, which is the ability to see within the descent away from the Torah Keduma, to see within the descent away from Gan Eden, to see within the descent away from the access point to the illumination of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the pre-traumatic state. It's specifically here in the transition through the Lahat HaCharef HaMesapeches, from the original Torah into the shattered Torah, where we find ourselves outside of Gan Eden, that Rabbi Meir has the capacity of saying, no, it's going to be a Katniss Or with an aleph. It doesn't mean that he changed the letter of the Torah. There's a halacha. You can't change the letter of the Torah. It would be a Sefer Torah psula. But what it means, as the tzaddikim point out, is that Rabbi Meir, with the vision of Rabbi Meir, his true name was Rav Nehuroi. It was the illumination of the eyes. Rabbi Meir was Ruach Hapenu Mashiach Hashem. He was referred to as the Arich Shabador, the tall one of the generation. He was buried standing up, reflecting the illumination of the mind that has the capacity to see both the pre-traumatic Torah and the post-traumatic Torah as serving each other, and more significantly, fundamentally being aware that the post-traumatic Torah, the secondary Torah of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, the second Luchos, emerge specifically from within the irreducibility of the Aleph of Anoichi that is revealed in the first Luchos, that the first Luchos fall apart, but they don't disappear. They just become disseminated within and expressed as the Luchos Shnios. So that when we talk about maintaining the Shivrei Luchos Rishonos in the Aron, it's not just a head nod or a tip of the hat to the notion that, oh, that was once a nice idea, now it broke, and we have to show and pay lip service to it. No, Adarabba, without the fragments of the first Torah, there is no second Torah. The second Torah is emergent from within the irreducible fragments from the Roishem, from the irreducible trace that remains when Kedusha shatters, and it's from there that we're going to rebuild the narrative. And that's the secret of Rabbi Meir, who was able to see the Aleph within the Ayin. The Ayin represents 70. It represents the capacity to see disunity and disparity in the world, and to find oneself caught through and cut through with trauma, and to see the 70 nations of separation, and to see 70, which is 7 times 10, which is the full expression of expressibility, which means the extension outwards away from the singular point of connectivity. Or we can see the Aleph at the heart of the Ayin, which is the Achdus Amuchletes, which is the Achdus Hashem that expresses itself within the pre and the post-traumatic process, which enables us to own the process of recovering the narrative structure for ourselves, just as Rabbi Meir did, so to speak. And it gives us and it brings us face to face with the ability to cultivate new, healthier, more redemptive, therapeutically positive, spiritually uplifting, affirmative, positive perspectives of how to be a human being in a world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by definition, has to conceal himself. And this is one of the elements of why, when a person loses an object, the inyan is to connect ourselves, based on the statements of Chazal, to connect ourselves to the neshama of Rabbi Meir, because Mashiach Tzidkenu, like the avoid of the tzaddikim that Rabbi Nachman describes, is there to be meshiv avedos, is there to return lost objects. Every person has lost something. Every trauma is a losing of something, the loss of an original innocence, the loss of an original sense of complacency and okayness and all rightness and sturdiness and all of the ignorance that we operated with prior to the shattering. So that was something that was beneficial to the self. It decomplicated the complications of life. There's no problem with seeking non-complication, with seeking tamimus and pshitus and wanting tamimus and pshitus. And in that place, we held a certain naivete that enabled us to close our eyes to what is happening on the outside, because it wasn't so contradictory to everything that we were trying to do for ourselves on the inside. It didn't stand in stark opposition. But then when things fall apart and the center doesn't seem to be able to hold, so we're no longer able to maintain that original semblance of naivete where we felt that everything was okay. It's at this stage that things fall apart and something is lost. There's something that's lost. Something has left me. I no longer operate with that original trust, with that original sense of connectivity. But then comes along the secret of Hashavas Aveda, and the whole tachlis of the Torah itself is Meshivas Nafesh. Torah Hashem Tamima Meshivas Nafesh. It's only when I allow the Torah to be the healing salve that I need it to be, will it restore that lost object, as the Meshilach says, that it has to be Meshiv Nefesh. It has to restore my soul to me like a person restoring a lost object, which is one of the reasons that when people start learning Gemara intensely, they begin with Eilu Metzia Shalom Ve'elu Chayav Lahachar. The person has to cultivate the mindset that in the secondary luchos, in the Torah Shabbat Peh of it all, in Eilu Metzia Shalom, I'm brought into a world of forgetfulness and lost objects and claims of ownership which are not correct, and I'm going to be thrown into a realm of each and every person trying to reconnect themselves to their original Torah, to that original truth, to that original stability that enabled them to function. And I have to make room for each and every person to grope along the way to try and find their own way. And it's a world of Rishus Harabim. It's a world of this person lost that, and this person is claiming it's his. But Sof Davar, there's an attitude of trying to return lost objects. The tzaddik returns lost objects. Each and every person has to learn the words of the tzaddikim with the eyes of the post-trauma, with eyes of the original luchos having shattered, and now I need the words of the tzaddikim to illuminate my eyes. I need the Eloikai de Rabbi Meir Aneni, the God of Rabbi Meir, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in that place of Ruach HaPeinu Mashiach Hashem that sees beyond the shattering of the Ayin and the Aleph, and sees within all concealment the opportunity to reveal even more, which is why he was able to learn from Acher, which is why he was able to take from that place that appeared to be so opposite from the light and able to transform it and translate it properly into a place of functionality and into a place of conveying spiritual truths. And it's specifically in this transition point from the Torah Rishona into the secondary luchos that we encounter the area, the territory where most of the work that we're going to be trying to uncover from the tzaddikim is going to be done, and that is the lave. The secondary luchos are the lave. The first luchos are the moyach. That's the aleph of the first luchos of Anoichi Hashem Elokeichem that reverberates through the consciousness of the individual, that unified singularity of thought, which is ein oid milvado, and the descent away from that original luchos of the pre-traumatic Torah into the post-traumatic Torah is the entrance into the lave. Into the lave, into the heart. The heart is no longer singular. The heart is avada, a part of the mind, the emotional reservoir that we talk about when we talk about the heart. We're not talking about the organ of the heart. We're talking about the emotional capacity within the brain, the heart of the brain, the malchus of tavuna, or the bina of the mind, which allows the intellectual speculation and his hisbonenus to be drawn down into emotional expression, to be felt in a real way. The heart is a crooked thing. The heart is a place of doubledness and splitness. The heart is a place of constriction. The heart is a place of feeling many different things. If the mind expresses itself in singularity, chachma, bina, and das, it's the thesis, antithesis, and the synthesis that reveal the collective quality of the mind, which is moichin, which is keser. Then the zayin tachtonim, the lower midos, which are rooted in the heart, are going to be the realm of separation. That's going to be the place where I feel different things in different moments. And when I follow what the heart is telling me, I might feel like a different person and a changed person in each and every second. And so the descent away from the mind into the heart, from the objectivity of the mind into the subjectivity of the heart, is the descent away from that pre-traumatic Torah of certainty into that post-traumatic Torah of not knowing and the need to cultivate my own personal narrative, which is in accordance with each and every person's heart. Kol chad v'chad lefum shira de liba. Each person in accordance with the conjecture of their own heart. And it's this place in the shattering of the first luchos that we see that in truth, the thing that is emerging, the thing that Rabbi Meir is able to look at and everybody else is looking at it and saying it's a katnas or, it's this difficult concealing garment that's going to block me from ever returning back into Gan Eden. And Rabbi Meir says, no, through the lens of Mashiach Apenu, through the lens of Ruach Apenu, Mashiach Hashem, through the lens of Reb Nuhuroi, from that place of restoring lost objects, it's the descent into the heart that is going to be the very thing that gives us the ability to return to the even higher Torah, which is a Torah that contains the pre-traumatic Torah and the post-traumatic Torah, which is the Torah of the Keser, the Torah of Atika Stima'a, the Torah of the Ru'usa Deliba, the desire of the heart, that innermost point of the heart, which can reach even higher than the innermost point of the mind. Because while we know that the Moyach is shalit on the lave, that the mind must reign supreme over the emotionality of the heart, that's only with regards to chitzonius. But panimius halev, the innermost point of the heart, which is bor ad ein soif, the ad bechlal, and it runs up to the prisas hamachitza that we've been talking about, and it runs as far as it can, only to retreat, and it runs forward again and to retreat again. And in that ascent and descent, it creates engravings, and it creates the chakikas halev, it creates the mesilos belevavchem, it creates the pathways of expression within the heart through the rutz of vishoiv and the engraving and the intensification and the iteration of desire, in spite of the fact that it's not being actualized. That creates the pathways of the heart, the chakikas halev, which are the lamed based and sivos chachma, those 32 pathways of the heart that descend down into the nun sha'arei bina. And then we have the yichud of lev and nun, which is the secret of Levanon, which is the place that should have a full hamtaka, and that secret of marav tuvcha shetzafant l'reacha. And so we see that the shattering of the vessels was for the sake of the emergence of the lev, for the emergence of emotional experience in this world and the ability to cultivate a vulnerable relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this lave becomes the ikar essential part of avodah in this world, and the secret of Rahmana Libabai, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the heart of a Yid. It doesn't mean that the heart is secondary post-traumatic symptomology. Adarabah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, be like Rabbi Meir, find within the heart the ikar nakuda. Avada, the heart, is a place of duplicitousness and a place of splitness and a place of Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, Malach Ra and Malach Tov, good and bad, left ventricle, right ventricle. Avad, it's a place of splitness. Avad, it's the place of the Malchus, the Tvuna, that descends down into the realms of separation, which will then descend further into the realms of separation. But it's specifically there that we cultivate the moichin and the mindset necessary to descend downwards, down into concealment for the sake of ascending upwards afterwards, to reveal that it's specifically within the post-traumatic Torah of human condition and vulnerability that will have the capacity of returning back up to Luchos Rishonos of the Aleph, of the cool, calm, and collected sobriety of the mind. And when we draw the fiery passion and the intensity and the intoxication of the heart and the human condition back into the cold sobriety of the mind, there's a yichud of the mayach and the lev, there's a yichud of the aviradachia, the cool air of the mind, and the butzina, the kardinusa, and the intensified flames and illumination of the heart. And there's a yichud between the mayach and the lev, and that's mal Hashem es levavcha ves levav zarecha. When a person has a yichud of the mayach and the lev, which is Rosh Tevos mal, so that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to open us up and reveal to us the Torah of Atika Stima'a. The Heilige Chayzimei Lublin writes in Divrei Emes, and this was an avoid of the Chayzimei Lublin. The entire avoida, or one of the elements of the avoid of the Chayzimei Lublin, was to be mamshich, the ha'ara of chesed and rachamim rabim, down into the heart of a yid. The heart represents that place where Mashiach Tzidkenu needs to be revealed, because as of now, Mashiach doesn't reveal himself to the heart, where we know liba lefum yoloi galia, that the words about Mashiach and the thoughts about Mashiach and the contemplation about Mashiach that takes place through the place of Malchus, through the Peh, is not miskala in the Leiv. As the Kamarna says, that there's certain tzaddikim who are makusher to the inyan of the Leiv, who are more makusher to the world of Bina, that don't have the capacity of living with that cool, common, collected knowledge of Mashiach Tzidkenu in the active principle of the word. But it's specifically there where we're going to be Dabru Alev Yerushalayim, V'kiru Eleha. It's specifically to the heart of Yerushalayim that Mashiach Tzidkenu has to come to speak to, which is the Krach Gadol Shebaromi, which is that palace and the gates of Rome where all of the different emotions fly and a person feels lost in the post-trauma of it all. That's specifically where the Torah is going to be megalazain on the Keser Elyon Alav Nikra. And this is why the Chozeh Lublin, whose entire avodah was to draw down Rachamim Rabim through the lens of Mashiach Tzidkenu into the heart of each and every yid, for a person to be able to feel, not only know that God is good, but to feel that God is good, not only to live in the framework of Chayk HaTov Lehetiv, where everything is ultimately good on an intellectual postulate, but rather to draw that down into a place of Lamata Me'asar Tvachim, where the heart itself, the leiv is ne'eman to what's taking place, and the heart itself feels good. There's an imus halev, there's a pleasantness of emotionality and connection and vulnerability. That's the avoida. And so the Chozeh Lublin writes in Divrei Emes that what we see is that the shattering of the luchos are reflected at the end of the Torah. Where at the end of the Torah, La'enei Kol Yisrael, to the eyes of all of Israel, what is it that Moshe Rabbeinu does? Moshe Rabbeinu shatters the luchos, and that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Meshabeach him for. Yasher Koyach Asher Shibarta, because sometimes there's a breaking that takes place inevitably, and it's specifically with the acknowledgement of the breaking and the willingness to include the breaking process within the process of rebuilding that a person is going to come to find the Koyach. But if I feel that the shattering and the trauma takes away my Koyach, then I'm going to be without Koyach, and then it's going to be a secret of Tash Koyach, which is the secret of Tishkach, which is forgetfulness and loss that descends upon the world as a result of the trauma and the emergence away from the simplicity of the original luchos. But if a person has the ability to hold on to the koyach and uncover the koyach oisios of the Torah, which is aleph, all the way through all of the oisios and mansbach, and then the added aleph at the end to be mashlim it with elef, with 1,000, and the secret of zeh katan gadol yihiyeh, and that 999 turns into 1,000, as we know from the secrets of the Kulator and Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the process of redeeming the Torah. When we uncover that koyach within us, when it's koyach ma'asav higad li'amo, when we're able to take the two hands, the two ventricles of the heart, the separation and the two-sidedness of the Torah of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiya, and the secondary luchos, and we're able to clap together in order to draw them back together to reveal that there's luchos rishonos at the heart of them, and then they separate, and there's luchos rishonos and luchos shnios, luchos rishonos, luchos shnios, just as the heart itself beats, just as the lungs and breath operate. In that place, this is where the koyach is going to come from. Yasher koyach asher shibartam. You reveal the koyach of Klal Yisrael when you enable them to pick themselves up from within the brokenness. And like we said before, each and every yid's own process of the breaking of the first luchos and the transition into the second luchos was already contained within the original experience of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that Yasher Koach is coming from the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu shattered the luchos, so that each and every one of us can go through that same process with the confidence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, Yasher Koyach, Yasher Koyach, Yasher Koyach. You're going to find renewed strength through this process. And it's in that place of Le'enei Kol Yisrael that we find Sosei Tevos Kli. It spells out the word Kli, a vessel, because a person becomes a vessel for light, specifically when they allow their mind to break open and they melt into the heart. When a person acknowledges the need to redevelop an inherent unity and a second level of naivete, the ability to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in spite of the fact that the original presence that I thought HaKadosh Baruch Hu represented in my life has undergone a certain traumatic shift, I have the capacity of picking myself up again in the secret of the Torah of the Balei Tshuva, and the secret of the Baal Tshuva, who stands in a place that the Tzaddik Gamor can't stand, because the Tzaddik Gamor's Torah is situated in a particular place. But the Baal Tshuva's Torah is a Torah that was situated in a particular place, and then it revealed itself to be capable of being expressed in another place as well. And Toiv Mashnayim and Echad, if the Torah can be above and below at once, that reveals the inherent capacity of the Torah to extend beyond its boundaries. And that's the secret of becoming a Kli that's machzik bracha. A Kli is a broken zach. A Kli is something that's concealing. It's the levush. It's the katnas or with an ayin, but it's specifically in the Kli, which is also Rosh Tevos lo yodea klum, where a person comes to realize that, wow, I thought I knew something, but I don't know anything. Rosh Tevos Kli, when a person undergoes that shattering, it's specifically there that the vessel for receiving a new influx of life is going to come from. And this can give us insight into a statement that we've referred to in the past from the Heilige Kotzker Rebbe, that ein davar yoter shalom melev nishbar. There's nothing stronger, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. But we wouldn't say the same thing about a broken mind, because the mind is meant to be mu'uchad. The mind is meant to be contained. The mind is meant to contain itself with hyper focus and attention and intentionality and das and chibur to a davar echad, yachid, umiyuchad perpetually throughout the day, as long as we can, without hesach hadas. In the place of the heart, there's a riboy, there's the heichal gvanim hamishtanim, there's the bilbul, there's the doubled nature of the heart, there's the leva of enosh, there's the split nature that gives birth to the intensity and the beauty and the color of emotional experience, especially when it's revealed to be the seat of hergesh and neimus and hisayrus and a ratzon to yearn higher than we could ever have imagined for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's specifically there that the beauty of the kli is going to be built. And so when the Kotzker Rebbe says that ein davar yoter shalom leiv nishbar, a leiv nishbar is a leiv that breaks and opens itself up to reveal the vibrancy of each of the directions that the heart can take. The heart has many destinations. The heart is the Evan that has 7 sets of eyes on it. There's 7 midos in the heart, and each midah needs to be given shape. Each midah needs to be gazed at and elevated and refined and revealed to be the resting place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's only when the heart breaks and the luchos break that we reveal the vibrancy of the the changing colors of the heart, that we now pick ourselves up and we begin to work with the vulnerable positioning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has placed us in. And it's specifically in the avodah of the heart that we're going to now come to begin again, to find the new beginning for ourselves. And this, says the Choyze, is the secret of connecting the end of the Torah to the beginning of the Torah, because the end of the Torah is the lamed of Le'enei Kol Yisrael, the hagdasha on the kli that takes place in the shattering of the vessels. And the first letter of Bereshis is the Beis, and it spells out Leiv, and there's a leap, as Rav Tzadok points out, that must be taken across the abysmal depths and separation in the halal that separates the end of the Torah and the beginning of the Torah, to become a levav enosh, to become a person who allows ourselves to listen to the innermost whispering of our heart, where we'll come to uncover the secret of the Torah Keduma that unifies the pre and the post-traumatic Torah. It's specifically there that we uncover the bridge that we need, and that's why the Chayza says it spells out Leiv, because Rahmana Libabai, all HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us is to open our hearts to become a vessel to reveal the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu a little bit more. And what we're going to be discussing throughout these shirim, and again, we're not, there's no masgeret. We're just going to be talking out different sugyos in the heart, different sugyos of what it means to become an emotionally vibrant individual, what it means to be mamshech the moichin, from the nahi of tvuna into zer anpin, what it means to live in that post-traumatic space of trying to put things back together again, in spite of the fact that we know it's not going to rebuild the thing that was broken, uncovering the mystery and the imagination and the willingness to believe that even though I won't be able to return to the thing that's broken, nevertheless, the edifice that I rebuild in conjunction with that which is broken and that which is in the process of being rebuilt is going to reveal a Torah Kaduma. It's going to reveal the Torah Vatikas Tima'a, which is retroactively going to reveal how the beginning and the end are both nichlal together, and that both shlavim of the Torah, the mind and the heart, the unity and the disunity, the katnas or with an ayin and the katnas or with an aleph, are all revelatory of the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in each and every moment in our lives. And the heart is a place of vulnerability. The heart is the place where we're honest. The heart is the place that we're honest with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where we're willing to bring our lichluch and our bilbul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can help us fix it. And the way it gets fixed is through the words of the tzaddikim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given permission to reveal the healing salves of the Torah's Chaim to us, the Torah's Hashem Yeshivas Nafesh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created a pharmacy, and that pharmacy is lined with shelves that hold the words of the tzaddikim on it. And the job of the pharmacists and the jobs of the tzaddikim in our generation, and those who connect themselves to the tzaddikim, and nowadays, as we know from the Ramchal, Eis Lasos LaHashem Hifru Sarasecha, each person has to be the tzaddik to the other person who doesn't have the light of the tzaddik in their life, and they have to reveal to them the healing salve of Pnimius HaTorah and the Enon Movadok Siv, and how the Torah makes room for the post-traumatic breakdown, and it enables us to pick ourselves back up. So the job is to source out and draw out the medicinal salve of the Torah of the tzaddikim to each and every element of the broken heart. And we're going to see how it's specifically within the realm of the heart that we can be vulnerable with fears of forgetfulness, where we can learn to uncover the secret of the Rishimu, which we're going to discuss next week, where we can come to understand the secret of Bina, and we can come to understand the nature of emotions, the emotions of the mind within the emotions, the Lamed Beis Chadarim of the mind that give birth to the Lamed Beis Nesivos Chachma, which then descend down into the Lev itself, which is the gematria of Lamed Beis. We're going to come to eventually understand how it's specifically within the broken place of those luchos that when we rebuild it back up again, we become individuals who can bring a heart to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants our heart. Rabbi Nachman said that in the end, everybody is going to be Breslov, and one of the explanations given by Rabbi Nassan is that Breslov is the osios of Lev Basar. It's a heart of flesh. It's a heart that feels. It feels the trauma, and it also fears the redemption that comes out from the trauma. It's Lev Yerushalayim that needs a doubled nachamu, both ventricles, Yitzhar Tov and Yitzhar Hara, Tov and Tov Ma'od, Laila and Choshech, pre and post trauma. And it's specifically there that we uncover the lave, and it's going to be the lave that is capable of being the vessel of receiving the light of Mashiach Tzidkenu and receiving the light of the Torah Chadasha, Vatika Stima'a. And it's specifically in the places of the lave where imagination is going to be utilized and the freedom of interpretation with the resistance and the sturdiness of stability, and where that doubled portion of the Yitzhar Tov and the Yitzhar Hara of Esav and Yaakov, of outside and inside, are going to reveal the fundamental unity of all things, Be'ezras Hashem.